Hello there, and welcome to another edition of My Top 5. I am HCD Rules 0001, and in this edition, episode 6, I would like to talk to you about my favourite sitcoms. Now, what I will do, because I've got quite a few extra mentions in this one, sort of like additional contents, I'll give you my lists of the top 5, my favourites, and then obviously the extra mentions. But I'm also going to make a separate list of US sitcoms. Now, that list isn't as big, but there's still a top 5. There's enough for a top 5 and a couple of extra mentions on that one as well. So we'll kick it off with UK sitcoms, or sitcoms more known for being UK based. So, and I'm going to have to do this one because I haven't actually written them out in a top 5 order. So what I'm going to have to do is say number 5 is quite a recent sitcom starring comedians Lee Mack and Tim Vine. It's in my top 5 list because of the mere fact there's more laughs per minute in this sitcom than probably any other that I've ever seen. It's Not Going Out. Now, Not Going Out is written by Lee Mack, and like I say, more laughs per minute than any other program I've ever seen. It's basically a comedy platform for Lee Mack and Tim Vine to push forward their their style. Tim Vine is a one-liner. He comes out quick and continuous one-liners, one after the other. Lee Mack, is a little bit more risque. He's more up front, but because of his northern roots, he can always play that northern card. Season 1 was with Tim's, and ironically enough, they're called Lee and Tim in the show. I think it just makes it easier when acting. But season 1, it was Tim's ex-girlfriend and Lee's the lodger in her house. And the first episode I distinctly remember because I've got them all again recently. The first episode, Lee comes in with a flyer and says to her, this kid handed me a flyer, and it's really bad showing of today's language. And he shows her the flyer. It's like, get a job in it. It's like, yeah. And then she reads it and she says, no, it's get a job in IT. Brilliant writing. And she left at the end of the first series. Tim's sister Lucy comes in and becomes the love interest for Lee. It's all to do with sort of like a big family affair, and it's all to do with Lee's pursuit of Lucy. And it's not every episode is. It's quite funny the situations they get into, more adventurous situations considering that the series has gone by. And Tim's new girlfriend Daisy is probably one of the best comic creations. She is that dizzy, it is unbelievable. Just have a look at it on YouTube after this. Not Going Up, you'll know what I'm talking about. Number 4. It's difficult. I've got 4 choices to pick from, and I've just got to go for it. Number 4 of my favourite comedies, Red Dwarf. Now, creators Rob Grant and Doug Naylor went into uncharted territory when they set this sitcom up. They wanted to write a sci-fi sitcom about the last human being in existence, and at the time, they were told, please don't write the sci-fi sitcom, because they were writers for Spitting Image, and we all know how good Spitting Image was. But Red Dwarf they're currently filming a brand new series as I speak, and should look forward to that one later on this year on Digital Channel Dave, who seems to have, not exactly acquired the rights, but the BBC don't seem that interested in it, and Dave show highlights, show episodes more or less every night or every other night. But Red Dwarf achieved cult status, and I'd imagine it was quite cheap to film the first couple of series, because it was just basically set, in the mothership. It's about the last human being alive, his dead bunkmate who's been brought back as a hologram that can't touch anything, can't do anything apart from talk. A feline type individual who's always sharply dressed, obviously more than I am, and a android who's there for everyone's beck and call. And the relationships between all four of them, as the seasons went on, you could tell it was getting more serious, and that was right before the two main creators split up, and it was alright, but it was becoming too serious. So when season 7 came back about 6 years after season 6, or at least 2 or 3 years after season 6, the seriousness was taken down a bit, and since then it's been definitely season 8, it started to get funny again. Well, I'm not saying that season 7 didn't have its funny bits, but season 7 was sort of like, because at the time they were trying to get a movie produced, and the only way to do that was to bring in a female character, and there was only one female character in Red Dwarf, and that was Kachansky. Like I say, new series coming out soon. If you haven't seen Red Dwarf, I don't know why. All of you people watching this, probably members of my Facebook fraternity, so to speak. I have something called the first annual Red Dwarf Facebook status update day. Now, I appreciate the fact that not everyone watches Red Dwarf. There's not an episode of Red Dwarf, but what I will say is that there are only 6 people going to this Red Dwarf thing, and all you have to do is on the 15th of February, which is the 22nd anniversary of the show first airing, all you have to do is go to this specific page on Facebook, put a memorable line or quote from the series, and just post it on this page, and that's it. That's all you have to do. It's not as if you've got to go anywhere or do anything special. If you're a fan of Red Dwarf, the first annual Facebook update status day for Red Dwarf, go to my page, it'll be on the events, click RSVP, because it's bigger than what it currently is. We've got 6 people going, and I'm one of them 6. Got 2 members of the family or 3 members of the family. If you like Red Dwarf, come and do it. And if you don't like Red Dwarf or haven't seen it, look it up on YouTube, watch an episode or 2, you will know what I'm talking about. It is funny, the situations they get in is funny. Crichton's one of the greatest creations of all time, and quite possibly he's the inspiration for Data in Star Trek. He is that good. Number three is the sitcom starring Rick Mayall and Adrian Emerson called Bottom. Bottom is about a couple of lowlives who quite literally cannot get off the bottom rung of the ladder. They live in a flat in Hammersmith in London. 90% of the time they're fighting each other, they're farting, cursing, burping, and it's a real prelude to what life is. It's a real insight to what life can be like for 2 single men in this world. There's all sorts of situations they can do, but the main point of Bottom is the gross out bit and the fights and the situations they get into. It's not for everyone, I fully appreciate that, and it's not for, you know, people that like Outnumbered or whatever, and there's no mention of those types of comedies in this list or even in my extra mentions. In fact, there's one, and I'll come back to that a little bit later on. The best episodes of Bottom were when it was just Rick and Aid, and that's it, you know. And basically the whole outline of the show was just Rick Mayall's character Richie just trying to lose his virginity. That was basically his main thing. In about, you know, 35, 40. Eddie's main goal in life was just to get drunk over and over again, you know, just have the odd curry, things like that. Basically the show's out grossing every other show that had been on up to that point, and it's a non-political correct comedy. There's swearing in it, and this thing was on at 9 o'clock on a Friday on a BBC Two, you know. There's no way in this current political correct climate, that Bottom would be ever broadcast. It's broadcast on Dave, you know, UK Gold occasionally. It's like Young Ones but grown up, and only 2 of them. And, you know, the mere fact that the fights are there, the swearing's there, it's a comedy for non-PC people. And if you can't stand PC like I can't, give it a look, because it's worth every moment you spend watching it. It got that popular, they took it to stage, you know, they took it to theatres, it grew that popular. You know, the last hurrah was in 2003 when, you know, you could tell that it wasn't as funny anymore, you know, the situations. And it was alright because at the time they were considered, you know, legends of the act. But you could tell that it wasn't as funny anymore, it wasn't as hilarious as when it first came around, or the first couple of stage shows. But, you know, it's a throwback to a time when people didn't worry so much about being offended and things like that. So that's why it's at my number 3. Number two. Number two is a sitcom that is very rarely repeated on television these days. It might be on UK Gold, but yet again, people with Freeview cannot get UK Gold. It's very, very stupid, that, considering it's available on non-subscription packages of Sky and cable. It's just absolutely stupid. Number 2 is Blackadder. Now, Blackadder is almost the greatest sitcom ever, and it's almost because number 1 is just so memorable. I'll come back to that in a few moments time. Blackadder, 4 series, couple of specials. There's always rumours of Blackadder coming back, and more recently, considering the star of it, Rowan Atkinson, has hinted that he wouldn't mind doing some more. Blackadder started off life in the Middle Ages after Richard III, who actually rewrote a little bit of history with Richard IV and things like that. You know, Brian Blessed as the king, and you know, Edmund was his son. He was quite literally the wimpiest lead character in any programme ever, but because the show was about him, you know, his elder brother was Prince of Wales, and so Blackadder was just the wimpy son. And as the series went on, you know, his responsibilities became less and less. And the thing is about British sitcoms, they go for a series of 6, and that's about it. Sometimes less than at the moment. But you have to consider the fact that Blackadder was at a time when, you know, sitcoms weren't aplenty. I mean, I don't even think I can name 10 sitcoms that were on that I actually liked. I mean, obviously there was other stuff. I'd say you couldn't have named 30 sitcoms before Blackadder hit the TV screens. Series 2 is when it really kicked in. It's like Richard Curtis was Ben Curtis is a golfer. Richard Curtis was brought in, and Ben Elton, you know, they all went at it. You know, Rowan Atkinson had a hand in the writing as well, but the writing, Blackadder was actually his name. Baldrick came up with the term Blackadder, and Blackadder, the first series, The Blackadder, was the first and only series that Baldrick was quite clever, and seemed more clever than Rowan Atkinson's character himself. But as this, you know, series 2 is when it really kicked in. Edmund had become, you know, less important in terms of stature, but he became more, you know, for himself. He became a lord, and you know, season 2 was set in Elizabethan times. The magnificent Miranda Richardson played Elizabeth I, or Queenie, and it was just much better writing, much better performances, if you can believe that, from these actors. I mean, you know, Baldrick became a total slob. He was Blackadder butler and, or, you know, servant, and the mere fact that Blackadder had become this ruthless, more or less uncaring individual that, you know, didn't really like anyone, but he was an aide to the Queen, which made him quite powerful in that respect. But the writing became brilliant. The series itself became a heck of a lot funnier. Not saying the Blackadder was rubbish, it wasn't. But Blackadder 2, 3 and 4, I mean 2 and 3 respectively, just blew it out of the water. 4, there were too many shades, but I'll come back to that in a sec. Series 3, Edmund Blackadder was the butler to the Prince Regent, which basically made him the most powerful man in England, you know, obviously apart from politicians and things like that. But the things that he would get away with, because the Prince was like me. Prince wasn't very with it at all. The Prince Regent was definitely one of the most stupid people ever, according to this particular version of him, played by Hugh Laurie, a tremendous addition to the cast. In the very last episode of Blackadder 2, he was added into the cast of Blackadder 3 and basically became the whole reason for Edmund's spur of existence. It was like, yeah, oh god, not again, gotta wipe his arse or whatever. But Blackadder 3, the writer became very, very clever, and the episodes in Blackadder 3 just brilliant. But we lost something in Blackadder 3 that we regained in Blackadder 4 and had in 1 and 2. Blackadder 3 lost Tim McInerney as Percy. Percy, a bit of a div, but you know, he came back in the final episode, or one of the episodes, as the Scarlet Pimpernel. It's brilliant writing. He came back as Captain Kevin Darling in Blackadder 4. Stephen Fry was Melchett in Blackadder 2 and 4, but he came back as Wellington in Blackadder 3 in the final episode, Duel and Duality. And the bit where, you know, because he had the Prince Regent had a one night stand with Wellington's daughters the night before, or one of them the night before. So, and the Prince fears for his life, so him and Blackadder swap clothes, and at that time wigs and things like that. And the mere fact that Hugh Laurie's Prince Regent was so stupid, because Edmund would say, right, well, I must be the Prince, Your Highness, Your Highness, you know, and Hugh Laurie would always say, Your Highness, and things like that. Just watch the section of Duel and Duality, Blackadder 3, where Hugh Laurie's playing the butler and Stephen Fry's in there as Duke Wellington. Just watch that bit. It's probably the highlight of the series. And they play around with history a little bit and say that Wellington was going to establish the armies, or Nelson's armies, in Bermuda or something like that, and Edmund comes up with the idea, well, why not get them at Trafalgar? Just fantastic, clever writing. And Blackadder 4 became a bit, I don't know, not simple, but Blackadder 4 became too similar, you know? There was too many similes in it. Or, you know, I'll give you an example from Blackadder 3, that same episode. It was about Blackadder's Scottish cousin McAdder, played again by Rowan Atkinson. He's mad. He's madder than Mad Jack McMahon, the winner of this year's Mr. Madman competition. And it would get worse in Series 4, which is set in the trenches of World War I, which was basically Blackadder, George, which is Hugh Laurie's character, and Baldrick just trying to get out of going over the top and, you know, getting killed, just so Field Marshal Hay could move his drinks cabinet just a couple of centimetres nearer Berlin. And that's basically what World War One was all about. But that's basically it for Blackadder. Like I say, a couple of specials. Blackadder Christmas Carol's pretty good. Blackadder Back and Forth, if it had a laughter track, if it was shot in a studio, it probably would have been alright. You know, Rick Mail making the occasional cameo as Lord Flashheart in Blackadder 2, Captain Flashheart, or, you know, in Blackadder 4. He actually played Robin Hood in Back and Forth. And the interesting thing about Blackadder Back and Forth, one thing I remember it for, was the fact that when Edmund went back to Elizabethan times in the time machine, he actually went up to William Shakespeare, punched him in the face, and said, "That's for every school child for the next 500 years." And that was probably the best bit about Back and Forth, was the mere fact that he did do that to Shakespeare, and Shakespeare didn't write a single play, and so Edmund had to go back in time, reset everything, because he had made a bet that, you know, to all of his friends, weirdly played by all of the Blackadder cast, you know, Stephen Fry, Miranda Richardson, Tim McInerney, you know, they were all there. And he went and met figures in history, changed time, and the bet was only for £1 million, which is something like £100,000 or something like that, before the euro kicked in. And it transpired you know, he went back in time, changed everything back to the way it should have been, and, you know, that was that. And, you know, it wasn't a tremendous send-off because it wasn't as funny as the others, but how could it be, for a start? But it was good to see Blackadder back in some fashion. And finally, number 1 of my favourite UK sitcoms. I mean, it's my favourite sitcom of all time. Ronnie Barker plays an old shopkeeper. That should basically give it to you. David Jason is Dog's Body, and just a magnificent sitcom. Open all hours. Basically, Ronnie Barker plays an old shopkeeper that's his main 2 goals in life. The first is to make as much money as possible and save it, not spend out tremendously on his nephew's wages or his pursuit of his second goal in life, Nurse Gladys Emmanuel, played by Linda Barron. And, you know, is the mere fact he studied someone who had a stutter, and you know, his stuttering came in more or less every other sentence he said, but The famous one was when Granville was trying to either open the till or, you know, turn a screwdriver or something, or open something. And you say, why don't you just jiggle it a bit? And the funniest thing about Open All Hours was when Granville, David Jason's character, would take the piss out of Arkwright, Ronnie Barker's character, was when he took the mickey out of him by stuttering, I am jiggling it a bit. And, you know, it's just the best sitcom of all time. You know, people say, you know, well, not Fools and Horses or whatever. This is just 10 times better. You know, Porridge is good. It's, you know, it's, like I say, I'll come to those in a few moments. But Open All Hours, you don't get sitcoms like this. And written by Roy Clark, you know, and one of these will come up in a minute when I go through the additional content. But just fantastic writing, fantastic acting, and David Jason has always said this is where I learnt my craft, watching the master at work. And Barker, who sadly passed away in 2005, was a comedy genius. You know, he wrote sketches of Two Ronnies and things like that, and he was a genius. And, you know, when he died, the world lost a great man. So as I say, Open All Hours, just easily the best sitcom of all time because of those situations. Some of the regular customers that come in, he fleeces them out of money. For instance, he would go to one guy called Cyril, who'd come in for like a bottle of beer or something like that, and he would make up some sort of disease or something to sell him a mirror. And the guy didn't come in for a mirror. He'd be like, whoa. And he'd be like, what? And he'd go, well, you need to prepare yourself for the damaging diseases that are all over the place. It's more to do with the hair. And Cyril goes, well, my hair's alright. And Arkwright would go, well, you need to take a look at it. For instance, look. And he'd be like that, and he'd look at it and he goes, so they go through the motions, and Arkwright would give him his change, and it would be considerably less than what the guy would be expecting. Like, and he'd leave the mirror there. He goes, no, I've taken the money for the mirror. He goes, I don't want a mirror. And he'd go, well, you better keep the mirror to keep checking these follicles, so to speak. And that would be the basis for the show. His meanness, unwillingness to let Granville do anything. I mean, for instance, Granville will say, can I have a chuck ice? And he goes, of course you can, there's no need to ask. There's no need to ask, you can have anything from the shop. Really? And then he'd go, as long as you put the money in the till, you know, and that's what it would be like. So, we're now on, after nearly half an hour, to the additional content, and this is the UK additional content. It's like a bloody video game directory, but UK additional content / extras, Thin Blue Line, basically what I would call Blackadder in police terms, written by the same people, starring the same people more or less. Just funny as hell. A sitcom that seems to be forever repeated even in this day and age, Dad's Army. It would have got my top list, but my top 5 list is set. It's those 5 and then these ones. Vicar of Dibley, so many memorable characters, catchphrases, so many memorable episodes. You know, they brought it back in 2005, I think it was, for a final 3-episode stretch, and you know, it was just magical the way it ended and the way it went. Men Behaving Badly, just a gross out lads sitcom of the 90s, basically pretty well described the time really that we lived in then. As I say, Only Fools and Horses, David Jason takes what he's learnt from Open All Hours, applies it to Del Boy, we follow the ups and downs of a family just trying to make amends, or trying to make a bit of money to put some food on the table, and that seems more and more relevant now than ever, which is why it's been repeated a couple of times in this past year. 4 Hours, quite possibly one of the greatest sitcoms ever, written by John Cleese and Connie Booth, about a hotel owner in Torquay who quite frankly can't catch a break. Needs to go to anger management courses, and I feel like I get like Basil Fawlty now and again, especially with these stress levels and things like that. Just fantastic writing, performances, the mere fact that he's tried to scrimp and save on the staff. He's got a good chef, he's got a good cleaner / waitress, Polly, but his waiter in Manuel, who barely speaks a word of Spanish, Andrew Sachs, just fantastic stuff. Almost on my top 5 list, but is not because I love other sitcoms more. The new Reggie Perry, I can't really say anything for the old one quite yet. I've got it but haven't seen it yet. New Reggie Perry with Martin Clunes is just me, or is just as everyone would be in that situation. You get to work late because of a train that can't seem to travel properly anymore, and it's just the ups and downs of office life. With a tedious job, you're quite good at it, but it just gets so boring now and again. Coupling by current Doctor Who aficionado Stephen Moffat is actually a semi-autobiographical, which is quite a long word for me, but a couple that gets together and they've got excess baggage in the form of her ex and her best friend, and his ex and his best friend. So there's all 6 of them, and it's just fantastic writing. The mere fact that season 4, one of the funniest bits about the show was taken out, probably lost them a few viewers, and probably the reason why to this date we haven't got a series 5. But Stephen Moffat is busy with other things like Sherlock or Doctor Who, not to mention anything else he's got up his sleeve. I'd like to see it back, but I'd also like to see the original 6 back together. But if it doesn't happen, we've got the memories of what we've got, which is quite possibly the best sitcom of the noughties, because there were some gross out bits, but there was also some extremely funny situations. For instance, where the character was edited out of the 4th series, in series 2 met this beautiful woman on a train who's now in Coronation Street, I believe. He lied to her about being disabled, and she had a disabled brother or cousin or whatever. She brought him in, and one of the girls in the sitcom was chatting up this butcher, or gone out with this butcher, and he says, you do limbs, don't you? How much do you want for this leg? So he could go out with the girl and not fake the injury. And the one exception to this, to the rule I talked about earlier, is Green Wing. Green Wing's that mad, that insane, that its creators, and full of cast members. I mean, there must have been 25 cast members that had to come back each and every series, and there were only 2 series and a special episode, so it was difficult to bring back. But, and like I say, Green Wing's the only acceptable difference in my opinion, because of the lack of a laughter track. It seems as though with medical comedies you don't need one. MASH, you didn't need one. Green Wing, you didn't need one. And the one that I'll mention later on, the US sitcoms, doesn't need one. But it's the only instance in which a laughter track is really needed. Just the characters in Green Wing. You've got the almost doctor who's actually related to two other characters in the programme. You've got the doctors that are trying to one-up themselves for the love of another doctor who joins them on the first programme. It's just insane. I haven't seen it for a long time. I've only seen both series once, and I really should be watching them again pretty soon. And who knows, I might well be. And the most recent addition to this list has got a laughter track, and it's probably it's easily the best sitcom to come out of the pipe since Coupling. Started last year. It's Mrs. Brown's Boys. I've talked about this in a previous episode. Completely non-PC. They leave all of the fluffs in. They leave all of the mess ups in. And the mere fact they ask them to repeat everything they say, and just it's a man in a woman's outfit. We know it is, but we don't pay any attention to that. It's a matriarchal family. Three boys and a daughter, just trying to get through daily life and hilarious consequences. And you need to watch it to believe how good it is. It really is damn good. There's swearing in it. It's the old Irish swearing, like Father Ted. Father Ted's another one I didn't write down. Absolutely brilliant. But like I say, instead of the word fuck, you got feck. I'll just feck off, will you? And it's just situations like that, and it's all going at the moment. The series is currently on, and it's just coming up to the last episode now. But watch it, you'll know what I'm talking about. It is that good. Easily the best thing on telly at the moment. Like I say, Father Ted, I forgot to write this one down on my extras. Father Ted almost makes the top 5. It's brilliant. 3 priests on a uninhabitable island, so to speak. One, a chronic alcoholic, who just sits there in a chair, just vegetating all day. And, this is where the word feck came from. Because technically it's not swearing, but it is, because you know what it means. A sort of like a kid in a man's body is another priest, and basically there because he just doesn't know any better. He's simple as simple will get. And a priest who's there, got all the faculties up here, but he's there because of a bank investigation. So the more out of the way he is, the better for the church and their housekeeper, basically. More every episode of Father Ted is awesome, apart from a couple, of course. Best of which I think is an episode called "Kicking Bishop Brennan Up the Arse," or "Kicking Bishop Brennan Up the Arse," where he loses a bet in a football match to one of his enemies in the priesthood, and he loses this bet, and the forfeit he has to do is kick the bishop up the arse, and it's all to do with his, oh God, what's going to happen to me when I do this, and he has to get Dutch courage, and he literally does it, and the bishop hasn't got a clue what's going on for about a month afterwards. And Ted's like, yeah, I fucking kicked him up the arse, and he says to Dougal, his simpleton colleague, he says, I want the picture, because they had to get a picture for proof. I want the picture blown up and put on the side of the house. And once the bishop comes in his trance, he's like, fucking, he's angry like a vampire. Just fantastic writing. And finally, we get on to the top 5 US sitcoms. Not a tremendously big list, although there is 5 choices. The best American sitcom of all time is easily Frasier. a spin-off from another one, but not quite in my top 5. It's just fantastic writing. Niles Crane is probably up there in the top 3 comic creations of all time in terms of either sitcom and or sketch show creation. Number 2, my second favourite, is easily How I Met Your Mother, which is, in my opinion, the best sitcom in America today. I will not watch The Big Bang Theory, I will not watch Two and a Half Men, or any other American sitcom for that matter, because of my loyalty to How I Met Your Mother. Once How I Met Your Mother finishes, I may well start The Big Bang Theory and Two and a Half Men. I've seen the odd episode of both, and it's alright, but because I want to concentrate on the storyline of How I Met Your Mother, my loyalties are there. It is, I imagine, just a story of how a father's telling his son and daughter how he met their mother, and to date we still haven't, we got a couple of clues here or there, but we haven't got a clue who the mother is just yet. They're thinking by the end of the next season, season 8, that we will know and everything will be done and dusted. Everybody Loves Raymond. For a sitcom to beat Frasier in the Emmys for best sitcom, and it's got to be good, and once Channel 4 started to show it, there's no wonder why it won. A man and his wife, 3 kids, lives across the street from his mum and dad and older brother. The older brother has issues with regards to the mother is always showing affection for the younger son, and the dad is always coming round to watch the sports. It's all trying to juggle everything, and just brilliant sitcom, almost as good as Frasier, but not quite. My Name is Earl. Like I say, I'm not exactly putting these into order, but it's all there. Interesting concept. Comedy without a laughter track. Maybe a laughter track would have helped it, but as I say, interesting concept. A forever I'll say evil doer, but a forever thief, burglar, whatever, tries to undo his wrongdoings because he wins a lottery, say $100,000 on a lottery ticket, and then immediately gets run over by a car as he's going, whoa! And it's all to do with karma, trying to erase everything that he's ever done bad to somebody. So like, he's written out a list of all the bad things he's ever done, and he's tried to cross them off or tried to do something for that person he's done something bad to. And the show got cancelled after 4 seasons, and I reckon it had a good, I still haven't seen the 4th season, but I've got it on DVD. But every season there was more and more stuff to be added to the list because he'd do something wrong while trying to make amends, and eventually it would work. But they cancelled it too early. America especially are too impatient for ratings to come. They need to give things time to develop. Any first series has got to be quite a good one in America, be it a comedy, a drama, or whatever. It's got to be quite good because they need to win the rights to a second season, and that's when usually a show blossoms, as in How I Met Your Mother. First season was okay, but second season was 10 times better. Third season, but second seasons are usually better than first seasons, as is the case with another choice, Scrubs, and this is the other exception to the rule. Scrubs doesn't have a laughter track. It doesn't need one. Medical comedy about 3 or 4 interns who join a hospital and are extremely dedicated to their jobs. One of them is not too sure about what she wants to do, but the other one fancies her, and the two of the others get together and eventually get married, have kids and stuff. And Scrubs, I think, still exists in some form today, but it's nowhere near as good without the proper characters and things like that. You'll know what I'm talking about if you've seen an episode of Scrubs. And then we're on to the sort of like lesser choices, so to speak, like Will and Grace. You know, first few series were quite funny. Before it became the Jack and Karen show, it was barely anything to do with the title characters. It was Jack and Karen all the way, and it just got tedious to begin with, to end. We hardly saw anything. Like I say, it got a bit tedious towards the end, and I haven't seen the final series, and I don't think I ever will, because they've stopped repeating it on the TV. And it was just a shame, because it started off quite well, and you know, it was just that. And the final mention for American comms is Friends. I saw the last episode because I think everyone in the world's seen the last episode, apart from those without telly. You know, it's all right. They stopped last year showing repeats of Friends on the TV, but they haven't stopped with Frasier. I mean, you've got to put Cheers in this list as well, but Friends was a stalwart of Channel 4. Stalwart of American TV. I mean, Warner Brothers just hit the jackpot when they made Friends. Friends, everyone's seen an episode of Friends. It's alright, it goes on a bit. 10 seasons, I mean, that's unprecedented, I think, in terms of sitcom, apart from one other that I must mention. Okay, you got Cheers, that's about a bar in Boston, but everyone knows the story there. The Simpsons. It's a sitcom. It's a cartoon sitcom, but it's a sitcom nonetheless. So basically that's it for this edition of my top 5. I do apologise for the length of it, but lots to talk about, really. So, you know, that's that. Give me a reply with your favourite sitcoms. This particular set of videos doesn't seem to be doing that well. Maybe it's because I'm putting 2 or 3 out per week and people just haven't got time to watch them. But give us your sitcoms, give us your thoughts and opinions on my list. As I say, these are my lists. You're quite welcome to make a reply video, write comments in the comment box, or just email me. The address is always at the in the description. So let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.